Many philosophers believe that our minds are not in the right place. We do not understand the truth, and what's worse, we are not able to understand the truth. Our minds need to be trained if we're going to understand the truth. As it is, if the truth were laid out in front of us, we wouldn't understand it and might not even recognize it as the truth. So our minds need to be trained, and philosophy is meant to help us get that training. Philosophy is meant to train us not only in what to think, but in how to think. Ascent, A-S-C-E-N-T, is a metaphor for this philosophical training. It commonly has an image such as that of the mountain, where the truth is at the top of the mountain and we are at the bottom of the mountain. We cannot understand it. We cannot see the sun at the top of the mountain, and we must be trained in comprehension of the truth. We have to be trained in how to understand the truth as we ascend the mountain. The metaphor is conveniently extended by suggesting that there is a swamp at the bottom of the mountain. This swamp is the world of our everyday experiences. It's the world of money, power, fame, and physical pleasures. We need to leave this world behind and pursue the truth and be trained in understanding it. That's the general idea of ascent. To be a little more precise, philosophical ascent literature typically has these 7 characteristics. First, there is the notion that there is this higher reality. And second, there is the notion that we do not understand it now, not as our minds currently are, or where they currently are. They need to be trained. Third, a path of ascent up the mountain, a way of learning to understand that higher reality, a way of being trained to understand that higher reality is given to us. The path of ascent is marked out. The program for education is given us. We are given pointers on, or a program for, or a set of practices that we may take up that will help us to ascend, help us to eventually understand that higher reality. In the meantime, we are given a partial account of that reality, or a rudimentary account, or in some cases, a metaphorical account. Remember, we could not understand it if it were given to us, but we can be given a few pointers on it, and we are given a few pointers of partial understanding. Now, fifth, our desires have to be reordered. We must cease pursuing money, power, fame, and physical pleasures, and we must learn to desire and to love the truth. We must pursue the truth at the top of the mountain, and in order to do so, we must abandon our pursuit of money, power, fame, and physical pleasures. Philosophical ascent literature very often has an illustration of ascent. Usually, this is a literary illustration. It is a story. It is a dramatic tale of a character ascending. And in some cases, more than one image in a single book. Now, commonly in philosophical ascent literature, there's this 7th characteristic that as we ascend, we make 2 turns. We turn towards the soul, we turn inward. But then we turn upwards towards that higher reality. We turn towards the soul and learn that the soul is more important than money, power, fame, and physical pleasures. But then we turn upward from the soul towards that which is beyond and above the soul and learn that it is more important than the soul. The inward turn, followed by the upward turn, constitute the way up the mountain. Now, philosophical ascent appears in various traditions and is criticized in various traditions and various philosophers. Here's a very brief overview of philosophical ascent in the history of philosophy. It's necessary to begin with Plato. Plato's Republic has some of the paradigmatic ascent narratives, such as the myth of and, of course, the cave analogy. Also, the very first sentence of the Republic suggests philosophical ascent, where Socrates tells us he and Glaucon were going up towards Athens, Athens being the city of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Now, in Plato, the higher reality is the non-physical, immaterial world. We have these images and metaphors and literary accounts of ascent here in the Republic, and again in Plato's Symposium, and in Plato's Phaedo, and in various other texts of Plato. And we have a program for training and understanding the higher reality, such as the plan for liberal arts education in the middle books of the Republic, book 7, to be precise. Now, another account of ascent is that of the Bhagavad Gita in Hindu philosophy, where the higher reality is Brahman, the divine which encompasses all. And the inward turn is towards the soul. And in the upward turn, Arjuna, the character who is ascending under the instruction of Krishna, Arjuna learns that the soul actually is God in this particular Hindu account. In medieval Christianity, Augustine has quite a few books that deal with ascent themes. And the Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius is one of the great, wonderful texts in the ascent tradition, where Boethius, under the instruction of Lady Philosophy, learns to abandon money, power, fame, and physical pleasure. In Book 3, he turns towards the soul, and then he turns upwards toward God. And in medieval Sufi Islamic philosophy, we have a charming account of ascent in this book by Ibn Tufil. Ibn Tufil's book, The Improvement of Human Reason. Charming tale of a man raised by animals on a desert island who, all on his own, through moral training and intellectual rigor, eventually catches a vision of God. In modern philosophy, ascent is more often criticized than not. Descartes I think of as an internal critic. He is rather like the ascent tradition in various respects. He does talk of ascending. He does talk of training the mind to contemplate non-physical reality. He turns inward to gain knowledge, and then he turns upward to gain knowledge in the famous method of doubt. But Descartes is a critic because at the end, after ascending the mountain, he goes back down the mountain, back to the swamp, to fix up the world using the insights he's gained at the top of the mountain. And he also tells us we do not need to ascend. He has done the hard work for us. We can simply take his word for it. So ascent is not necessary for us, though it is necessary for someone, and it's helpful for others. So I think of Descartes as a critic of the tradition, but a friendly one who is not quite departed from the tradition. Kant, however, departs from the tradition. Immanuel Kant explicitly tells us that there are these higher realities that we must believe in, and he names them God, and the truth about free will, and the truth about immortality or life after death. And he gives us reasons to believe in them, but he will not give us evidence that they exist. So we have reasons to believe, but not reasons that these beliefs are true. And so what Kant is doing is suggesting that there is a higher reality, but that ascent to it is not possible. There's no way up the mountain. The way is blocked by impassable cliffs, if you will. In William James, Nietzsche repudiates every aspect of the ascent tradition, rejects it thoroughly, promotes a thoroughly this worldly philosophy. There is no mountain. There is only the swamp. And it's actually quite lovely. The swamp is a very nice place. It's not the terrible place all these foolish ascent philosophers made it out to be. Thus says Nietzsche. And he mocks the ascent tradition, in particular in his book, Thus Spake Zarathustra. William James is not exactly a supporter of the ascent tradition as I understand him, but he's sort of friendly to it. He's coming off of all the modern critics, but he also studies some of the old ascent literature from Plato and the medievals. And some aspects of ascent do turn up in James' thought, but not others. C.S. Lewis, particularly in the book The Great Divorce, and in the book The Last Battle, and to a lesser extent the book Mere Christianity, may be thought of as a return to the tradition, with a good bit of Platonic influence and a heavy Augustinian influence from the medieval Christians. Lewis, I think of as thoroughly supportive of the ascent tradition, probably with all 7 characteristics. However, Lewis closes Mere Christianity with an important remark, and if it is correct, it goes a long way towards justifying what Descartes was doing and responding towards Nietzsche. Lewis closes Mere Christianity with this observation: it is those who cared the most for the higher world who did the most for this one.